All right. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good day this morning. So my name is Liao Zanpin. I'm with the Trade Committee of the Chamber of Commerce, Malaysia Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, Macau. But initially, let me just briefly introduce the Malaysian Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong and Macau. So this chamber is tasked to promote, to support, and to represent the Malaysian businesses' interests in Hong Kong. And secondly is the chamber is tasked to promote the bilateral trades between the Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, and Malaysia. And thirdly, and very importantly, the chamber is tasked to promote the student grant for well-deserved students studying in Hong Kong. Now, it's only about 6 years old, but this young chamber has achieved a lot of milestones in bringing businesses and people together across the border, which is good. So Malaysians in Hong Kong and friends of Malaysia, if you'd like to re-experience Malaysian hospitality in Hong Kong, do join us our activities. This morning, we also have co-hosts that are with us today in Hong Kong in alphabetical order. The Belgian Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, thank you for co-hosting with us. The Chinese General Chamber of Commerce Hong Kong, the Dutch Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, the Finnish Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, the Singapore Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong Thailand Business Council. All my favorite countries around the world. Thank you very much for co-hosting the webinar with us. And obviously, JW Barrett, thank you very much for providing us this wonderful facilities. Now, let me just set the context of this webinar, the building business in ASEAN through e-commerce. Why do we have this topic? If you look at the ASEAN populations, about 670 million population people across 10 diverse countries. Now, 50% of the population stay in urban area, meaning there are a lot of easily accessible people that you can reach out to, the buyers that we can reach out to. 134 million population in middle class, meaning they have the right purchasing power to buy your products and services. Can they reach the internet? Yes, 62% of them would have internet access. So it is really a ready market for your businesses as you look at ASEAN as the next frontier for your business. Now, what has changed? The COVID-19 has transformed and expedited the transformation, really, how customers and businesses, how they search, how they review, and how they buy your goods and services. Now, for us in business, how do we find the most and more effective business ecosystem to reach out to these consumer and businesses? Now, and again, secondly, is for a business point of view, how do you structure your business so that you can leverage and take advantage of the government incentive and the tax benefits that it provides in the region? So we are very honored today to bring together a few experts in this field. They are really the heavyweights of this field to share their views with us. Now, let me just introduce you the first speaker, who is from Lazada. Now, Lazada, as you may know, is one of the Alibaba's companies. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, the e-commerce platform and ecosystem across Southeast Asia market. It has truly transformed life for many people, and it's truly transformed how businesses are done in ASEAN. Now, we're going to have Damon C. Damon C, if you can see him. So Damon C is the Senior Vice President for Lazada cross-border in terms of the business development and key accounts. Prior to Lazada, Damon was heading the Alibaba UC Web International business. And before Alibaba, Damon worked for Tencent in the strategic partnership, product growth, and the operation of Tencent's products. Now, he has overseen more than 10, 15 years experience in different leadership roles. The second company that we are bringing here is Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young, or simply EY, is one of the largest professional services network in the world. EY primarily provides assurance, tax, consulting, and advisory services to its customers, including strategy, operation, HR, technology, and financial services consulting. Now with us this morning from EY, Joanne. Joanne is the Hong Kong tax partner specializing in technology and telecommunication areas. She's currently the technology, media, and telecommunication tax leaders for Hong Kong and Macau, and the principal key contact for Asia Pacific technology sector. Now she has over 20 years of practical and extensive experience in providing tax advisory and compliance services to top-tier multinational clients. And Sam is the associate partner in the operating model effectiveness team of Asia Pacific Tax Center in KL, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. At EY, Sam spends his time advising fast growth companies in a wide range of sectors, but with a focus on technology, media, and telecom sectors. He supports them as they grow internationally and with establishing the most tax-efficient operating model for their business. Now, prior to EY, Sam worked for a Asia-Pacific headquarters multinational tech company as their global head of tax and treasury. So ladies and gentlemen, we're obviously in very good hand today with all the experts. A little bit about myself as the moderator. I work for a company called Concentrix. We are one of the largest technology-enabled global business services company, specializing in customer engagement and improving business performance for our clients. So we help the e-commerce players in terms of servicing their sellers and supporting their customers globally and in the region. So I'm responsible for building and managing the business for Concentrix in Greater China and the ASEAN region. So my career spanned across technology-enabled services and consulting with IBM, Accenture, Deloitte Consulting, and Vsauce in Asia Pacific. Okay, so before I pass on to the speakers, a little bit of housekeeping. You would notice that the Q&A comment section, it is open from now. And feel free to put in your questions in the Q&A sections anytime if you want, anytime as the speaker speaks. I will only open the actual Q&A after all three speakers have presented their materials and shared with you. Yeah, okay. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will pass on to Damon from Lazada to present his speech. Damon? Over to you. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's a really big pleasure being invited by the Chamber of Malaysia to give you an introduction about Lazada and also Lazada's cross-border business. Let me get it started. Today's presentation, I'm going to cover three parts. The first part is introduction about Lazada. The second part is the market landscape of Southeast Asia e-commerce. The third part is our future planning and also the key project we are carrying on. Let's jump to the first part. As then previously mentioned, Lazada is Southeast Asia's leading e-commerce platform. Here's the whole kind of development kind of journey of Lazada in Southeast Asia. Lazada was built up in 2012 by a very famous startup incubator, Rocket Internet, in Singapore. And then in 2015, it launched its own logistics services across whole 6 countries in Southeast Asia. And in year 2016, Alibaba acquired a controlling stake in Lazada. And back then, we launched what we call a Taobao collection. It is a product solution which helps the Chinese sellers from Taobao and Tmall. We put their product and services together and sell them through Lazada to the Southeast Asia users. We have greatly kind of increased the diversity and assortment of the local market. And also since then, we changed the business model of Lazada from e-retail to a marketplace. from buying then selling online to build a marketplace to encourage the small medium sellers get on board and sell their product and services to the end users across this country. And in year 2018, we launched the Lazada Wallet, which is a payment tool to kind of ease the payment pain point from the local users. And in 2019, Lazada became the World Olympic Committee's partner because of its part of Alibaba Group. And this year, even with the backdrop of a pandemic globally, we still keep our development on track. We have launched the Alibaba Global AI platform to support Lazada search, recommendation, advertising kind of business in the e-commerce platform. And also we kickstarted the Apollo project, which is kind of a logistic related technology integration project to upgrade the whole fundamental logistic of Lazada to a world-class level. Next is the mission and vision. When we talk about Alibaba business, we always put a lot of highlight in these two parts. Our mission is to accelerate progress in Southeast Asia through e-commerce and technology. And our vision is by 2030, we are able to serve 300 million customers, create millions of jobs in e-commerce ecosystem, and power real profitable small and medium business across Southeast Asia. Lazada is the fastest growing e-commerce platform in Southeast Asia. By the end of April this year, we have 65 million active users across the whole 6 countries in the region. And we are experiencing a super fast growing rate, more than 3 digits, 100% year-on-year growth rate since last, from the past few years. We providing very comprehensive product offerings. So far on the platform, we have more than 214 million numbers of product listing, and we have a very, very high, strong user engagement. More than 60% of the users are daily active users, and we are leading in the logistic network. We build up everything by ourselves to ensure the certainty from the seller to the buyer. We can make roughly the same and the next day delivery more than 97% from our fulfillment center. Next part is about the market landscape of Southeast Asia. I think just now Zen has given a very, very high level macro view, and I'm going to give you a view from Lazada and e-commerce platform. And this year, as we all know, we have experienced a very, very challenging and difficult year with the backdrop of COVID-19. Took place in early this year, then followed by the global oil prices, make the global economy really, really uncertain. And because of this background, external factors really make the currency, the economy really, really unstable in some of the regional countries. But with this backdrop, what does it mean to Lazada? Actually, we look at the numbers, and we have seen actually the COVID-19 really is the catalyst to accelerate the whole e-commerce growth in the whole ASEAN countries. Not only the 6 countries we have our business, but this 6 countries has even more higher kind of penetration compared to other countries. We have seen a lot of offline traditional fast-moving kind of consumer brands. They are very enthusiastic. They are very eager, keen to join online, because the offline business almost in the certain period of time, almost frozen, and nobody go out their home to buy offline, and they are not able to sell offline. So they have to move on online. And also, we have done a lot of great effort to ease the local sellers and cross-border sellers to make their business recovered as quickly as soon as possible. And we have done a lot of efforts to engage with the users by providing them a facial mask, their thermometer to measure their temperature, and also we have donate a lot of necessities or money to the local community. And last, which is the most critical part, we make sure our logistic runs as usual, keep the logistic network during the pandemic moving. This page shows the macro view about the whole digital economy in Southeast Asia. According to Google Temasek, by 2025, the overall Southeast Asia internet economy market size will be around 306 billion. You can see the number has been revised from year to year, which means the growth rate is faster than the analyst expectation. Now, out of these 306 billion, roughly 50% are coming from e-commerce, and you can see the e-commerce compound annual growth rate is much higher than the average. On the right-hand chart, you can see the breakdown by countries of the e-commerce marketplace market size. The fastest growing country is Indonesia with 48%, then followed by Vietnam, Thailand, and Philippines. And for those relatively developed countries like Malaysia and Singapore, their number is still managing to double digits, right? See, Malaysia is around 27%, and Singapore is more than 20%. The Southeast Asia country, I mean, this region really mobile first country. Most of the people, their first time access to internet, using the services actually from their mobile. You can see no matter from the social media penetration, nor from the the streaming entertainment and also content consuming kind of usage. Southeast Asia countries are ranking world. I mean, really top ranking. I can share a few numbers, like from the Facebook user base. Indonesia, Philippines are ranking world top 3, and Thailand and Vietnam are ranking in top 10. So it really built out very strong base for e-commerce to grow, to bring the very diversified assortment to better serve local people's needs. The next part is about the whole e-commerce ecosystem we are building for the Southeast Asia market. We all know that in this region we have seen a lot of real challenges. For example, the first thing is logistics. The overall development is still a little bit lagging behind from the internet penetration or the mobile internet penetration. The GDP, I mean the logistic cost, the share of GDP for example, take Indonesia, for example, it's around 24%. And for a country like China or other countries, China is around 15 something, and for the developed countries, less than 10%. So the cost of logistics is still very high. And the second is, the online payment penetration is still very low. People are primarily relying on cash payment. So we provide cash on delivery. Also, we are promoting an e-wallet to really help the local users easily buy products online. And the third challenge is the retail landscape is really fragmented. People for the people in the metropolitan capital cities, they can easily access almost everything from all around the world. But the people besides, not living in the capital city, actually their access to the product and services is declining a lot. So the e-commerce really helping them to connect to the cost-effective, more variety, world-class product and services easily. And the last point is it's not a single market. We have 6 countries, and 6 countries almost speak, more than 6 languages. And each country have their different, a little bit different kind of fundamental, regardless from the GDP per capita, their internet penetration, and their disposable kind of current income, and also the preference on product and services. So we have our local presence, we have our local business to better serve, cater for local consumers' needs. As we all know, Lazada is really, really deeply integrated into the whole Alibaba economy. From the left hand, you can see all the e-commerce superpower from Alibaba. We are there to support Lazada. On the right hand side, you can see we really do a lot of involvement from the traditional e-commerce. We introduced the Lazada game, Lazada coin, to enrich or increase the stickiness and add more what we call fun elements during the whole online shopping process or procedure or journey. And at the bottom part, you can see this is the backbone. The group can provide a support to Lazada's strong growth in the region. From the technology side, we have Voyager. We upgrade the seller center. We have logistic part. The Cainiao International is supporting Lazada e-logistic to upgrade the technology to the world class to make sure the product or the SKU are locating as closer to the user as possible, and also the last mile fulfillment as at the fulfillment rate as high as possible. And the bottom part is the payment part. We have Lazada Wallet, and also Anshin give a lot of support to make sure the local money collection and also cross-border payout are smooth and safe. And from the logistic part, we can see that right now roughly we have increased 75% of the parcels handled by Lazada to 80%, which means I would say most of the parcels are really handled in Lazada. And I mean, from the seller perspective, at the moment you hand over your products to Lazada assortment center for the rest journey till we pass on the parcel to the end user, all handled safely by Lazada. And also we have roughly 71% coverage on the last mile delivery, which is a great deal in the backdrop of very fragmented market in the region. This page shows the whole coverage of our logistic in the region, the footprint of our fulfillment and sort centers. Today we have a lot of merchants or sellers are based in Hong Kong and Macau. According to the chamber, most of our business are actually operated from mainland China. So if you are operating from mainland China, the fastest way is you hand over your product to our assortment center in either Yiwu or Shenzhen. Then we'll deliver them to the different or 6 countries per the local users order. And also we are trying to shorten the distance between the parcel and the user. So we have set up a lot of local warehouse assortment center, fulfillment centers. So you can also put your product in our assortment center overseas. And this is a service what we call Fulfilled by Lazada. So in that sense, you are delivering the products at the almost same experience as the local sellers. We can make sure the parcel can deliver to the door side of the user within 3 days. Or for some Lazada Mall brand product, we can make it in 2 days. Also, we have integrated or upgraded payment technology for the whole Lazada business. Right now, we have a very, very high online payment success rate in year 2012 compared to last year. And the user base of Lazada wallet adoption increased 4 times. And the 6 countries, market penetration are all powered by Ernst technology. And the wallet user, their revisit and repurchase rate has hit a historical high because of the technology, our refurbishment and upgrading. And also from the assortment perspective, we are kind of the most comprehensive e-commerce platform in the region. We have a marketplace for those small and medium business enterprises. They can build up their business online in a very scalable and sustainable way. Also, for the brands, we have our Lazada Mall service. They can sell their product and services online. And also, as I mentioned previously, because of the COVID-19, because of the liquidity, the people are moving almost frozen. So the offline business are very eager to move their offline business online. So we have seen a very, very strong momentum and trend on this area. Also for retail, actually we acquire local retail stores. We bring those retail. We provide our supply chain power, apply our supply chain power into the retail business to make the whole purchasing experience even better. And also, as I'm representing the cross-border business, we have providing a very, very diverse long-tail assortment, leveraging Alibaba's global network to better serve Southeast Asia users. Previously, they can only buy offline at a very high price and not much choices. But now they can access easily in a very cost-effective way from Lazada online through our cross-border services. And for last month, actually, so far we have more than 16,000 brand stores across the 6 countries. And for the cross-border, we have the latest number is 18,000. More than 18,000 brands are joining Lazada more. And in China, we kickstarted a project, what we called M2M, means Tmall to Lazada Mall. Just for your information, right now Tmall has covered almost all the top brands across the whole world. Also, the mid-tier brands are tapping into China market through our Tmall global business. So we can help those brands to extend their coverage, not only China, but also Southeast Asia through Lazada cross-border business. And for those brands, we provide a very comprehensive service like end-to-end digital marketing solutions. All the fulfillment end-to-end are fulfilled by Lazada. Also, we give them data intelligence, and also most important for the brands, the IP protection. They are safeguarded in Lazada. This page shows the two-way kind of moving of the products from China to Southeast Asia, and also some of the products actually the top brands through Lazada selling to China. Just give you a few brands like Chinese Face, Ellipse from Thailand, Indonesia. And for the product selling from China or from the rest of the world to Lazada, basically we are through 2 channels. One channel is Alibaba economy entities like Alibaba Express, Tmall, Taobao, and also the B2B business platform, 1688.com platform. And For the rest of the world, selling to Southeast Asia is through our team of global business. Their brands can open up store either by themselves or their agency on Lazada that sell to Southeast Asia. Here are a few highlights on our cross-border LazGlobal business. We grow, actually, we are the fastest growing BU out of the three key business in Lazada group. We have seen 100% or 3 digits growth for the past 6 years. And the Fulfilled by Lazada, the overseas bonded warehouse services, has seen year-on-year 3 times growth. And our end user experience, because of we bring the product closer to the end users, our user experience has improved significantly. Our NPS increased year-on-year 11%. And also we have seen the boutique stores increased 3 times, and Lazada Mall increased 2.6 times. And last but not least, the seller incubation, which is very critical for the growth for the small medium business. We have seen every month 100 plus. Sellers have a GMV, monthly GMV more than 30,000 US dollars. As we all know, Alibaba has a very strong culture, really seller user focused culture, always seller user first. So Lazada really bear the same kind of culture heritage. We have the highest tenure amongst other peers. Also, we have 90%, more than 90% of local staff in Lazada team across 6 countries. We have 20 years of experience driving the growth in developing countries. And we have more than 1,000 Lazada staff so far has attended the group level training programs. And for the female leaders and staff, actually we have more than 50% of our staff are female. Alibaba is a big family. So you can see now Lazada is really one of the family. We are, each business has a kind of, is a kind of a titan, a symbol, animal symbol of their business. You can see now it is really, really deeply integrated into our business. Here you can see at the right corner, it's Lazada. That's all from my end. Thanks for your attention. Then I'm giving the mic back to Zen.
Well, thank you very much, Damon. This is very, very insightful. I've known Alibaba and Lazada for many, many years. This is probably one of the first time I see everything put together and see how it flows and what is the value and so on. So thank you very much, Damon. I particularly like the last slide. Now I know why I see so many different mascots when I go to the Alibaba campus and Lazada campus. Very good. Okay, thank you. So next we're gonna have EY. Just give me a sec. And Joanne, Sam, over to you. Joanne, you wanna unmute yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Zen. Damon, firstly, thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. And also thank you to Malaysian Chamber, for your very kind invitation to present this talk today. I'm just gonna, if you can just move the slide to the next slide, please. And the next, please. Thanks. Just a quick introduction. As Zen has mentioned, my name is Joanne, and I'm a partner in the International Tax and Transaction Services of EY, and I'm based in Hong Kong, and I also lead the TMT tax practice. I hope everyone here today are all healthy and safe and keeping well amid the COVID pandemic. So let me just start. I work on some of the world's largest TMT clients. I also work with a lot of early startups and entrepreneur groups, and they come to us for tax guidance. And actually the message, actually the same for both. Managing your taxes when you're running a digital business is a key consideration in ensuring a profitable and sustainable business, particularly in ASEAN. The reason for that is many ASEAN countries have really started to tax cross-border digital tax offerings. They're moving to close loopholes that have developed as the digital economy has prospered. And I think a lot of businesses are actually, caught unaware and now waking up to the fact that they may now have a tax bill, which they previously did not factor in. Can I have the next slide, please? So let me just start. So if I could share my, kind of practical experience in terms of, what are some of the issues that TMT clients or clients trying to, establish and manage an e-commerce setup in ASEAN are concerned with. Now, the first thing businesses often forget is because of the nature of business, which is digital, your business model or your operating model, exposes you to global tax because at a switch of a button, you are active and you're live and present in many jurisdictions all around the world. If I can give you a practical example, say you sell clothing. Now, if you were a bricks and mortars physical retail shop selling clothing, so you set up a shop in India or you set up a shop in Korea, your tax liabilities and exposure potentially lie with your physical shop. So when you set up a shop in India, you consider Indian tax and so on and so forth. Now, if you're selling clothing virtually in e-commerce, where it's B2B, B2C online market platform, instantly when you go live, when users purchase your clothing, let's say you have 100 users sitting in 15 countries that purchase your clothing online, then potentially you will have exposure in all the countries in which your users sit. So it's very, very different. And I think this particular fact pattern and the nature of e-commerce ecosystem sometimes gets lost with clients when it comes to tax. So for tax, you're potentially, very much vulnerable to, I guess, being exposed in multiple countries the minute you go live or someone launches or downloads your apps or makes a purchase. Another thing I hear quite often with businesses is they tell me that they're making a loss, and so therefore there should not be any taxes. It's also very important to note that for taxes, there are a lot of taxes, in particular indirect taxes, which Sam Barrett, my colleague, will go through, GST, VATs, that don't really care whether you make a profit or loss. It's imposed regardless. So you may find that when you enter into a transaction, you don't factor your taxes in. Actually, even if you make a loss overall, you still have to pay tax on that transaction. Another one that comes to me very often from clients is, I don't really have much of a presence in that country. I may have a warehouse, I may have a 3PL that helps me with deliveries, or I don't even have that. I may just use a server in that country, or I may have a couple of freelancers or housewives sitting at home assisting with my my business online, and therefore I don't really have a tax presence. Again, that is also untrue. Because right now the tax laws have been amended and revised to take into account where you can trigger a tax even if you do not have a lot of physical presence in a country. The other thing I just want to very briefly, before I pass the stage to Sam, is just to say ASEAN countries in general have been coming up with a host of indirect taxes. So, and Sam will elaborate this, but just briefly, Singapore, Malaysia have come up with GSTs and service taxes as of January. Indonesia is jumping on the bandwagon in August. They implemented a VAT, Thai, Philippines, and so on. So this is an area really to watch out for if you are actually executing a digital or e-commerce business in ASEAN. It's not all doom and gloom. There are some countries that are trying to provide some tax incentives for doing business. So Malaysia and Singapore, for example, would be one who are trying to provide some incentives for an e-commerce hub. And also the OECD, from a tax perspective, the OECD has tried to relax certain rules on permanent establishment and residency due to the impact of COVID and travel restrictions. As Damon said, the COVID is a catalyst for e-commerce transactions. We from a tax perspective, the OECD has relaxed certain rules. So Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, for example, have relaxed the PE rules, you know, which is necessary because there are travel restrictions. So all in all, if I might just end with this note, is if you're planning on establishing and executing an e-commerce business in ASEAN, please try to take tax into consideration, look at it holistically in terms of corporate tax, indirect tax, and also customs. So to ensure that you have, a sustainable and tax efficient structure going forward. And on that note, I'm going to pass the presentation to Sam Barrett, my colleague who sits in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and he will discuss tax and operating model considerations. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you very much, Joanne and Zen and Damon for a great insight into Lazada. So for purposes of this presentation, we should be really sort of focusing on e-commerce for goods. As Joanne said, that there's a whole another set of operating model considerations, tax implications, and a suite of other sort of potential incentives available to companies active or sort of considering growth when it comes to the cross-border delivery of services as opposed to tangible goods. But I think that's probably a topic for next time that if you've got interest in, will be let us know. But so just looking at sort of e-commerce strategies, they're sort of, as Damon said and Zen said at the beginning, massively developed over the last decade in ASEAN and more broadly in Asia, driven by demographic developments, technology advancement, and quick adoption in the region. A lot of countries going straight to mobile. So a lot of local and overseas retail companies increasingly integrating web, tech, web, retail, mobile channels, all for the sort of benefits of customers, and really seeing a jump in their revenues. So many of the markets here, omni-channel shopping is really the norm now, with customers enjoying and expecting very high service levels and good terms. So consumer products retail companies the world over are really pushing and moving into e-commerce quickly, really to sort of try and quickly offer a much better product range to a wider and greater consumer base. They're trying to sort of create distinction between different product ranges, I think, potentially. For example, using e-commerce for sort of end of season outlet or excess stock sales. They also want to sort of take control over those retail margins previously lost to sort of in-country distributors. Also wanting to provide greater flexibility to customers by permitting online orders to be returned to the local stores as well. So a number of different key tax and customs considerations to evaluate when launching, refining, and growing these e-commerce businesses in Asia, as well as sort of trying to blend the online offering with current offline segments if they're already in existence. And again, all this is to provide sort of greater flexibility to the consumer and greater reach. So post-COVID or during COVID, what have we seen? We've seen many store closures, we've seen social distancing, country lockdowns, and these are all, as Damon said, and it says in the numbers, all turning consumers of all age groups away from sort of visiting brick and mortar stores and online. So there's been a lot of research done. Damon quoted a lot of numbers as well. I think that in a number of countries in ASEAN and sort of the wider Asia Pacific, over 50% of consumers are now using e-commerce or online purchasing for their purchases. There's been a lot of decreasing sales revenue, really forcing businesses to look at their cash positions, and as well sort of physical store overheads, which are really eating into their margins, and they've really noticed this over this period. So the duration of the outbreak is or has already led to changes in consumer behavior. I think customers are more now accustomed, even the older generation, to using sort of digital channels, as obviously they're concerned about local infection risks. So to cope with these challenges, I think businesses really should, if they haven't already, start to adopt some type of e-commerce model that's sort of much better suited to handle any sort of unpredictable fluctuations in demand. So e-commerce is really shifting away from being sort of a secondary channel to becoming more of a primary interface for the consumers, and businesses that don't, as I said, already have a strategy really should sort of start looking to establish a clear e-commerce strategy that we'll be able to maintain those relationships and ensure sort of competitiveness during these times. And as I said, and as Joanne just said prior to this, it's really key, as I'll talk about in a minute, to sort of make tax a bit more of an integrated, or take taxes a bit more integrated in when sort of business planning is being done. And it really is important to sort of ensure that the profit margins that you think you'll be getting will actually be there, and there's no sort of cash tax or indirect tax leakages or increased risk due to sort of poor planning. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So with all of the change and action and sort of move into e-commerce, obviously brings with it challenges on how best to set up that structure, both from a sort of a legal perspective as well as a physical transaction flow perspective. So what operating model should a company choose? There are obviously many options, and there's no one size fits all of which obviously have different tax implications, risks, and outcomes. So many companies choose to go it alone, set up their own e-commerce channel or structure or network, or they can choose to use a third-party platform like Lazada, for example. So setting up on by yourself is probably quite daunting and challenging, and requires a deep awareness for sort of tax and customs rules across the end-to-end supply chain to make sure that you're sort of complying from a tax perspective, as well as sort of having the most tax efficient model in place. So setting up a local to local e-commerce operation would obviously be a lot less complicated than one with a supply chain and sales model across a number of jurisdictions. So in reality, a lot of companies now have both their own e-commerce strategy and structure, as well as sort of a shop face, as Damon was sort of talking about, using a third-party platform to sort of cover all angles and channels. So it's really important, I think, to have a strategic view of where the company's e-commerce and offline businesses are going, and to ensure that any operating model is scalable and sustainable across the markets. So it's key to understand if companies' products are being sold offline, online through their own platform, and then also online through a third-party platform, all of which have different considerations and challenges from a supply chain and customs perspective, as well as tax and intercompany pricing or transfer pricing perspective, all things that need to be taken into account. Also, if you're using intellectual property, whether that's sort of developed in another region where, let's say, the headquarters of your business is, whether this be technology, brand name, websites, customer lists, etc., all sort of classified as intellectual property. And the plan is to use those in Asia or in the ASEAN markets. There are obviously tax implications here as well. And this intellectual property, if being developed in one location, used in another, needs to be transferred in some way, whether that being licensed or sold for use in these markets. Potentially there could be a need for some sort of what we call arm's length charge for the use of that intellectual property. And that needs to be in accordance with all of the local tax rules in both the buying and selling countries. So if you're setting up your own platform, you should be considering obviously using free trade zones or bonded warehouses to sort of facilitate, improve efficiency on from the product flows, both from a sort of indirect tax and customs perspective. So understanding also where sales and marketing strategy or the team doing those functions sits or will be sitting when you're doing the planning is really important, and how these sort of services contribute to the value of any intellectual property created. And also, how are these services provided within your group? How are they priced cross-border from an intercompany perspective? We have to consider whether the sales and marketing teams are going to be traveling, doing deals across borders. As Joanne said earlier, whether they're going to be creating a taxable presence, whether that's from a corporate perspective or from a personal tax perspective. Every country obviously has its own distinct rules, and also what are the implications of that from a tax risk and compliance perspective? Do there need to be registrations that you're unaware of? Data centers, where any data center is going to be located for the e-commerce structure or network. Who owns and controls that hardware? The data in that center, is it the local entity? Is it the overseas principal? How is that data shared? How is it used and potentially charged, therefore, between related companies? And how do the tax authorities in each of these countries view this? Again, differing opinions in different countries. And what's the transfer pricing, the intercompany pricing of the provision of that data? All things to sort of take into account. Then sort of as you move along in the evolution of your sort of e-commerce journey, do you need a local presence? Is it required to set up a physical presence in any jurisdiction to sort of achieve the level of sales, customer experience, delivery, payments, for example? Will this local entity just undertake functions locally, or will it provide services across borders? Again, Joanne was talking about the digital cross-border provision of services. We're talking about goods now, but both are sort of impacted from a tax and customs perspective. What are the functions that are going to be done in-house? What are the functions that are going to be outsourced? Looking at logistics, payment processing. When we talk about payment processing, will the payments be done through a payment processing platform? Is this a local entity or an overseas platform? Will the payments be made from multi-countries or multi-country consumers to one sort of central source? How are those funds then distributed cross-border, if they need to be, from the country of origin or to the country of origin, where they sort of should be booked or need to be booked from a local accounting and tax perspective? So do you even need to do this physically with the funds, or can you just do it from an accounting tax book perspective? All things that need to be taken into account. Also, what are the withholding tax implications and the service tax or VAT implications on cross-border payments for payment processing? All very different depending on the country. So we haven't really even talked about sort of sales returns and the reverse logistics piece, which complicates things even more when it's in a sort of a cross-border context from a tax and customs perspective. So as you can see, so many questions that sort of show the complexities and how challenging the tax and customs environment are in ASEAN, and all of which, again, as Joanne said, to sort of really should be considered and carefully thought through early on in the legal process, early on in the planning process, both from a sort of a physical perspective, a legal perspective, a financial flow perspective, to sort of really ensure the best tax outcome from an efficiency perspective, but also from a sort of a risk management perspective. Thank you. So as I said, although today sort of we're focusing on e-commerce of tangible goods, physical goods, there's now an ever increasing amount of digital or indirect tax on the cross-border provision of services, as Joanne said, across ASEAN. And it's changing all the time. So when you're sort of setting up this structure for tangible goods in this case, also be very aware that even though you're not providing digital services to the consumer behind the scenes and potentially within the company group, you actually are providing potentially the cross-border provision of services again. So be aware of all the taxes that are in existence and the changing landscape, because you're likely subject to these taxes as well. But again, as I said, that's probably a subject for a complete other session on this. From a tax incentives perspective, there don't actually seem to be that many sort of e-commerce industry-specific tax incentives available in ASEAN. Joanne mentioned the Malaysia and Singapore. Yes, there are a couple of specific ones here. But tax incentives are not sort of normally the main driving reason behind setting a business or e-commerce business up in the location, but certainly can definitely add to or accelerate any business case. If the volumes are material, if the capex and the local investments are material enough, incentives can really sort of turbo boost the business case when taken into account. So normally incentives around the region in ASEAN are sort of focusing around investments in manufacturing, R&D, regional headquarters or trading or service hubs, or even setting up in sort of regions which are sort of developing regions or sort of underprivileged sort of economic zones, for example, or even in sort of businesses where there's sort of specific national importance, or also technology investments that create sort of local jobs, and a lot of the incentives are around that. So if any of your planned operations are in these areas, because obviously the e-commerce is a whole ecosystem, so it's likely that some of the operations or some of the functions could be could be incentivized at some point somewhere. So it's sort of definitely worth exploring the availability of incentives in all of the countries that the presence is planned in. That being said, as Joanne said earlier, there is one incentive of note specific to e-commerce, and that is in Singapore, where eligible companies can apply for a reduced tax rate of 10% for 5 years. And this will apply to any sort of e-commerce or the income from e-commerce transactions with overseas parties. So there's obviously many free trade zones and bonded warehouses in the region, which Damon mentioned that Lazada has a very large network of these. And one of note being the digital free trade zone, which has been set up in Malaysia. And this was actually done together with Alibaba and the Malaysian government. And there's sort of an extension of their world trade platform. And the goal of this is really to sort of set up a e-commerce infrastructure and an ecosystem and logistics hub here in Malaysia. So there's a number of benefits to sort of setting up in this area as well. So when companies start looking at the e-commerce journey or sort of setting up an e-commerce strategy or structure or operating model, they tend to go on a journey. So firstly, starting with quite a simple model where sort of drop shipping into countries or directly to consumers from overseas and with no physical local presence. So once companies are established in the market and understood the markets where they want to be, then sort of moving and developing sort of bulk shipping and more partnering with local logistics companies to sort of further expand their reach. Then when markets are a bit more established, your typical model could be with more of a local presence and setting up a local legal entity to sort of be the importer of record and transact and sort of sell and market the brand and the goods locally, potentially with more sort of regional fulfillment. Again, there's obviously a number of variants of this journey and of these models, depending on sort of markets, sectors, and whether you're selling sort of B2B or B2C. So a lot of companies nowadays, they're somewhere along this journey already. And I think that those who have yet to start pre-COVID have really, as Damon said, really sort of accelerated their growth and speed of investments in e-commerce out of necessity. I mean, those that were already further along in this journey with more sort of efficient models or mature e-commerce infrastructure or networks in place, as Damon said, they've really seen explosive growth and super profits during the COVID period. So all of these different models have their unique tax and customs considerations, and irrespective of where you are on that journey, it's really key to fully consider that any sort of tax or customs, sort of unexpected tax and customs charges that can really quickly eat into the profit margins if they're not properly planned for. So for those of you on the call who are non-tax people or who have non-tax roles, I think I speak for all of them, having been on the client side for many years. I think I speak for all of the people and would really sort of urge you to get your tax people involved as early as possible in that planning process and make the tax function a business partner on this journey. And I really don't think you regret it. So I just wanted to touch on a few sort of typical models that we're seeing with clients in the region. And again, sort of different models are in place for companies at each end of the e-commerce sort of maturity journey and the maturity spectrum, if you like. So from a local to local perspective, when companies already sort of have bricks and mortar operations locally, this is probably the least complicated model. So we have, where are we? Sorry. So we have the principal here based overseas. We have the local subsidiary already established in company, being the sort of importer of record. Sorry, can you see my slides? Yeah. So you have the sort of local subsidiary. The local subsidiary is purchasing the stock from the overseas principal. It runs its own brick and mortar as well as online stores. You have the local subsidiary concluding the local sales, both for the offline and the offline sales. and also then fulfilling all of the local sales orders from a local fulfillment center. So this really sort of enables the local entity to take a more, let's say, tailored approach to sort of market development and manage any local market complications. So there are a number of tax considerations here, although this is the sort of the most simplest model. You've still got sort of intercompany transactions that need to be priced from a transfer pricing perspective in accordance with both the rules in the overseas jurisdictions as well as the local jurisdictions, understanding what the margins should be for both of those entities, which of these entities is taking the inventory risk, which of these entities is owning the inventory. There's a number of permanent establishment considerations, local presence implications, potentially for the overseas company if this is done incorrectly. Are there any VAT or GST or other indirect tax obligations for the overseas principal to register in the local country? All sort of considerations, even for the most simplest model. So then on the right-hand side, you have a local-to-local model that we see used when companies are partnering with third-party retailers. So this model is more sort of relevant to companies or brand owners where they don't have the possibility or infrastructure for sort of going direct to consumer. So here you have the third-party local retailer purchases stock from the brand principal overseas, so effectively losing the retail margin to an external party. This local retailer has its own network of brick and mortar stores as well as online channels. Here the customer orders online from the local retailer, and that local retailer fulfills these orders. So so the local retailer will also then have discretion over sort of local promotion, branding activities, and potentially setting discounts. So again, similar to the first model, a number of key tax considerations, but similar to the previous model, really, that it's all about sort of transfer pricing, ensuring internal and external pricing are sort of aligned efficiently with transfer pricing rules, making sure that any physical or deemed presence by the principal in the local jurisdiction is managed, as well as any VAT or GST registrations that may be necessary nowadays for overseas selling. So again, a number of sort of talking about logistics and reverse logistics. As I said, that's a whole other session altogether, but I think the key considerations around this are really understanding what's possible in each country around sort of breaking bulk shipments, managing sort of stock allocation between the on and offline channels and pricing that accordingly. And yeah, I mean, looking at how best to price those intercompany transactions in accordance with both of the rules in the local country as well as the principal country, and also sort of whether indirect tax or VAT applies to these transactions. And as I said, that'll vary by country. So then moving on to sort of more cross-border models. So firstly, we have a sort of a direct-to-consumer model where there's inventory held locally or regionally. So this is where, so the first model on the left, we've got direct-to-consumer. We've got the principal owns and operates, let's say, brand.com own platform. The customer places the order on the website. The principal here holds stock and ships these goods to the local market to fulfill the customer's orders. So here the principal engages both local and international logistics providers to support with the last mile, first mile, and sort of the international leg. This is a good way because it requires sort of no upfront investment from the brand owner and no sort of physical presence or establishment in the market, and you still get sort of access to the customer to sort of satisfy the orders. Here, the third-party logistics provider is generally responsible for managing the delivery as well as the return logistics of any products that are returned. And this model tends also to be used to sort of complement any local-to-local operations where sort of the brand is also selling, but not sort of a full suite of products. It wants to sell sort of additional SKUs through that are not being sold through existing channels. So again, number of tax considerations. Again, similar themes: VAT, GST. What are the the registration requirements, what are the obligations on the cross-border transactions, also the local transactions. Understanding who owns the goods, where does legal title pass, typically or pass before importation. Which company or which party is responsible for any sort of formalities around import, licenses, depending on the products where required. Again, permanent establishment risk, depending on what activities are taking place by the principal in the third party country. So all sort of similar themes around indirect tax, transfer pricing, local physical presence, creating a sort of a permanent establishment risk and potentially obligation to pay tax in different countries. Also, will the business here accept cash on delivery, or are there online prepayments? Again, all sort of have their own tax risks and sort of implications around that. So moving on to the middle model, where we have similar sort of direct-to-consumer model, but fulfillment here is done from a third country. Similar to before, the overseas principal here owns and operates the brand.com. You've got the principal holding stock and shipping goods to the local market to fulfill the customer orders. The physical goods are actually shipped from the alternative location. You have the principal engaging with third-party logistics providers, both locally and internationally. Again, no upfront investment required. Customers selling from overseas, principal is selling from overseas. Again, model to be used again to complement sort of local to local, already existing local to local operations. And again, similar theme, VAT, GST from a tax perspective. What are your obligations? What do you need to charge VAT and GST on? Very similar to the previous one, and understanding who the exporter of record, who the importer of record are, what functions the principal's undertaking in a number of these jurisdictions, what are our registration obligations, what are our payment obligations, what are our licensing obligations, depending on the products. So all very sort of similar themes. And then finally on the right, we have a sort of a direct-to-consumer model where we use a third-party platform such as Lazada. So the model we'll see here is normally that the customer places the order with the principal through or using the third-party platform operator, again, typically Lazada probably, and that can either be a local market website, so lazada.com.my or .sg, so depending on the local jurisdiction. The principal then fulfills that order directly using third-party logistics providers. The platform provider, again, Lazada in this case, will collect your money, or the payment gateway will collect the money from the customer on behalf of the principal, and then remit the balance after deducting, let's say, the platform provider service fee, if you like, to the principal. So then the platform provider will provide a combined listing and logistics and all of those services. So, and if it does that, the payment to the principal in this case will be sort of deducted, will be made after deducting any logistics fees. So again, depending on the platform, logistics costs may also be charged directly to the consumer by the platform, or charged by the principal if they're offering a sort of a door-to-door service. So this type of model is more sort of preferable for retailers that are looking to enter new markets without investing in sort of their own platform or their own sort of structure or infrastructure. Key tax considerations here, very similar to before. Principal is the exporter of record, understanding what export controls are, licensing requirements, export requirements. Platform provider enables the customer to check out goods in this model, belonging to a number of multiple principals in one transaction. How does that work from a tax, direct tax as well as an indirect tax perspective? It's important to manage the allocation of discounts well from a VAT and GST perspective. When the payment's being made to the platform provider or the third party's logistics firm, are there import taxes? Is VAT or GST applicable to this service for payment provision? Are there any withholding taxes that could be deductible and therefore sort of effectively cash leakage to a loss-making business for any of these transactions? So all a wide variety of tax implications that you potentially sort of hadn't thought about. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just some sort of key takeaways, and I think that they're probably clear. So sort of really in summary, I think it's key to have a detailed strategy for and sort of roadmap for expansion into or of your e-commerce business in ASEAN. Understand what your current state is, where you are at the moment, and how you're sort of going to grow that model, and what will be the most tax efficient way of doing that. Make sure you have tax and customs built into the plan, into sort of the forecasting process from the beginning. It's really key, and I can't emphasize it enough, that this planning should be done with the tax guys on a country by country basis and a transaction flow by transaction flow basis, but also more sort of holistically and a more strategic level, looking at the sort of the overall operating model strategically. And please keep track of any new taxes, because they are coming up and being launched in a number of countries around the region at the moment. Making sure that you're registered in the countries you should be registered, making sure you're reporting what you should be reporting. It's a very time-consuming exercise, unfortunately, but a lot of countries now are introducing more and more requirements, both on the e-commerce piece of goods as well as the digital provision of services cross-border. So when, as I said, when you're doing all this planning, do also make sure that you consider any potential tax incentives, and again, not just for e-commerce, but for the whole sort of suite of functions or the whole ecosystem in all of the locations that you're planning to set up in, because as I said, if and where they're available, they can really sort of potentially improve and add to any sort of business case. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for listening. Hand it back over to Zen.
Yes, thank you, Joanne and Sam. Really detailed explanation and very, very insightful. I think after looking at that, I'll just give the work to you guys. I'll just you guys do it. So ladies and gentlemen, we are getting into our Q&A section. Now, so you can continue to put the questions in the Q&A feature in Zoom, or if you like to ask the questions yourself, you can go to your name under the participant feature and click the raise hand. So when our colleagues will see the raise hand and give you access, voice access to ask the question. Okay. Now we do have 2 questions in the Q&A. Please keep it coming. The first is from Lizette. Yeah. So feel free, Damon, Joanne, Sam, feel free to answer if you can. So how do you handle the different import and license regulations for the product per country? And any thoughts, Damon, Joanne, Sam?
Yeah, maybe I can start first. Yeah, I think Lizette clarified it's a question to Lazada. It's a very good question, and very commonly asked question. Actually, if you are doing business with Lazada, all the the nitty-gritty import, export license regulations are handled by Lazada properly. Basically, if you're shipping small parcels through our logistics network, in-house logistics network, all the customs clearance, etc., all the handling part are done by Lazada. So this is a very, very smooth and kind of easy process. And I can answer the second question. Basically, it's linked. Basically, they are asking what is offered to international SME with regarding to inventory distribution. You can just ship your product to our named assortment center. In China, we have Yiwu and Shenzhen. Out of China, we have a Hong Kong assortment center. You can ship directly from your country, and out of Southeast Asia, 6 countries. You can, for example, you are Korean seller, or you're a Macau seller or Hong Kong local seller, you can ship your product to our fulfillment center. Then for the rest, again, handled by Lazada. And for the, I think I want to clarify one thing, whether for the small parcel shipment, in a global shipment has any sort of customs duties, etc., kind of taxation impact. In fact, in the 6 countries, for the import products, there is kind of a threshold above certain amount of local currency products. You are going to be levied on a tax duty, but if it's below, it's tax free. And for more detailed information, I would suggest you to come to Lazada University. You can just go to your Google, key in Lazada University, and you can find almost everything from there. I just give you a quick answer.
Okay.
Back to Zen.
Thank you. Very good, Damon. No, I do have one questions here. So Damon, what we have seen is other than the typical marketplace e-commerce in China or in ASEAN, the live stream e-commerce, or probably what you call as Lazada Live, with people selling online, has been picking up in China especially, and in ASEAN it has also picked up quite a bit, right? So how do you see the live stream e-commerce, I call it, difference in ASEAN than China? And do you have any advice on what are the specific product categories that the sellers, the merchant, should consider using live stream?
That's a very good question. Actually, the live streaming e-commerce has, in the past, I would say 1.5 just booming in China. And the GMV per live streaming session is huge. The big celebrity live streaming can hit 100 million RMB. It's just crazy numbers. But comparing to China, the rest of the world, I would say, including Southeast Asia, I think it's still at an early stage, primarily for 2 factors. Number one, the live streaming is not that much popular or have that much kind of deep penetration. In China, the youngsters, the elders, they kill their time through watching live streaming, short clips, video clips. So they have adapted themselves into this user kind of service experience or kind of a scenario. And I didn't find that strong kind of adoption in Southeast Asia, even though the youngsters are adopting TikTok or a few others, super popular app. But still, the second factor, e-commerce connection with the live streaming is not that much strong. In China, people can sell their product from live streaming because of the e-commerce technology has been deeply or seamlessly integrated into the live streaming product. So you don't need to jump from app to app, right? Stop your watching or interrupt by the purchase action of the live streaming. You can just click the button and make the purchase simultaneously while watching the live streaming. I think at this moment in Southeast Asia, we haven't seen that small ecosystem building up. And the good thing is in China, we have all different kind of services. They are grow super stronger, and each big player are willing to work with each other to make the business even bigger. And for Southeast Asia, I think there's a great opportunity for Lazada to tap into this area in particular, because we haven't seen a very strong correlation between the live stream watcher vs the online purchaser, right? But in China, there's a strong correlation. People tend to watch and buy. So for Southeast Asia, I think what we are doing is trying to incubate an online kind of shopping kind of a habit. At the same time, introducing live streaming services to help the potential buyer or the real buyer know more about the product and services they are trying to buy, and in the end increase the conversion rate of the seller. So far in some countries like Thailand, live streaming is growing super fast, and the conversion rate so far is super promising. For countries like Singapore, it might not be that case because people might not be that much enthusiastic, purchasing, watching, at the same time. So in the nutshell, I think this market is super promising, and we are on track to merge new interaction way to the online shopping purchasing kind of journey or experience.
Okay, very good, Damon. Thank you. There's another questions from Yema Hui. So the question is, if I'm in e-commerce, how do I structure the operation to make it tax efficient? So Joanne, Sam?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. I mean, Joanne's got an opinion, I'm sure, as well. But the way I would do it, I would, as I said before in the presentation, it's really important to plan and really understanding sort of where you are, where you want to be, and understanding that journey, understanding what the value chain looks like from end to end, what functions are taking place in what jurisdictions, understanding what transaction flows are taking place. And that's a good base for then looking at how you can make each individual element of that. So obviously we look at tax on a legal entity by legal entity, in a different country by different country basis as well. So understanding again that whole picture, individually, independently, as well as holistically, will allow you to sort of plan to make efficient all of the different elements of that structure or those operations. Joanne, anything to add?
Yeah, I think if you are a Greater China or Hong Kong headquartered group and you're thinking of investing into ASEAN, which is obviously the topic of today's discussion, is typically, for a tax sort of exercise, if you like, or assessment, is we would like you to pick a principal location where you would be, where you would actually book the bulk of your income. So you generally, as Sam was mentioning, you look at your functions risks and where your people are, where your IP rests, where your warehouse is, where your, warehouse or 3PLs or your servers and so on. But you generally need to pick a principal location. And from a lot of the exercises that we do with clients who are China or Hong Kong headquartered, is China tends to set up China for domestic China sales, and Hong Kong tends to book the income from the rest of the world. There's a host of reasons why, ranging from legal reasons, forex reasons, tax reasons, customs, and so on and so forth. But we have seen that trend. And as I said, that's not a one size fit all, but generally we see this kind of trend. The other thing is Hong Kong is generally used as a principle because first we have a very low tax rate, 16.5%. We can generally try to argue some of these as offshore and non-taxable. It's got quite a good treaty with the ASEAN countries, and there's no indirect taxes anyway in Hong Kong. So there's lots of reasons. The other one is IP planning. I think IP planning, very important when it's in a digital business, is to think and house it somewhere, and you can sort of structure licensing, arrangements using the trade name, licensing that out. Doing some planning, in terms of royalties and so forth and whatnot, because IP really is one of your most important intangible assets, when it comes to valuation and when it comes to, valuing your companies, be it trying to seek funding or otherwise. So I think, that's it really. Thanks, Anne. Back to you.
Okay. Thanks, Joanne. Sam. Ladies and gentlemen, we are running out of time, so we gotta close this webinar in a minute or so. So I think looking at all the detailed insights, the advice from Damon, Lazada, Joanne, Sam from EY, I think your best bet is reach out to them and ask them how to better structure your business operation, your tax planning, and how do you leverage the Alibaba and Lazada e-commerce ecosystem, and just give it a try. And the market is out there as we shared. In coming 11 November, there will be a big Double 11 promotions. Literally, you can make your annual sales in one day. And the coming 12 December, which is the Double 12, they call it, you can almost finish up, complete your whole year's quota in just two locations, right? So do leverage on that using the platform Lazada and get some advice from EY on it. So if you, in closing, if you like to have the EY's presentation that Joanna and Sam shared, and the Lazada will come later, we would really appreciate that. You will receive a email survey. Please do help to complete the survey so that we can know how we are doing and how we can serve you better in the future, right? And I also encourage you to check out the Malaysian Chamber, and if you all want to pay forward to the young people in the country, in Malaysia, check out the Malaysian Chamber Student Fund. Check out all the co-host chambers. As I said, some of my favorite countries around the world. Just be part of this dynamic chamber and business community network, and we can support each other, right? So ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for your time. Thank you again for investing the time with us. Thank you, the speakers, Damon, Joanne, Sam. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you and speak again. Stay safe. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.